He is an action movie superstar who just last year announced he was stepping away from acting. And now we're learning more about Bruce Willis's diagnosis. His family originally said he was diagnosed with aphasia, which affects how you communicate. Now they are saying that he is battling fronto-temporal dementia, or FTD. And Dr. Kohli is joining us now because we mentioned this yesterday, but still there's so much to understand about FTD and what it means. How is it different than Alzheimer's or dementia?
So dementia, Kim and Tom, is an umbrella term that we use to, it's non-specific, it's not a specific disease. It describes all kinds of conditions that can cause changes in our functioning, our social behavior, our memory, and our personality. Of all the dementias, Alzheimer's is one type, and FTD comprises about 10 to 20% of dementia. So it's another type of dementia. Now it's a little different from Alzheimer's because it usually presents about 10 years earlier. So you can start to see it in people as early as 40, but 40 to 65 is kind of when you see the first symptoms of it.
Is that the fundamental difference between the two? Is age, or are the symptoms, the struggles different as well?
So probably the causes are different because we don't yet know what causes FTD. We think it's protein deposition, but also very much so the symptoms. And that's one thing that's classic about FTD is that it involves the frontal lobe, which is the part right behind our forehead of our brain, and the temporal lobe, which is the part right behind our ears. And the frontal part is kind of the part that controls our personality, our executive function, our thinking, our planning, and the parts behind our ears control our language and our motor skills. So that's what's affected, who we are, how we communicate, and even as much as how we walk or our swallowing, those types of things.
It's all very sad. I mean, any diagnosis is sad when you have something that's so serious, but when your ability to communicate makes you think of ALS.
It does.
And movement and speech.
And in fact, research shows us that there may be some overlapping pathophysiologic mechanisms. So some of the things that cause the cell death in ALS may also be causing cell death, causing the parts of our brain that are in those areas to either die or lose their communications in an overlapping way. But that still needs more, research. But it's devastating, and even more so for the family because the person changes. And I feel like Bruce Willis is part of my family because I grew up watching his movies. And so to me, it's been really disturbing to sort of see this progression, first the aphasia and now the diagnosis of FTD.
Yeah, and these roadmaps I think are interesting when we talk about how fast medicine is evolving. First, diagnosing how these things actually happen, what triggers them in certain people and when they present. But also that idea of, I think we now replace knees and hips and shoulders rather easily, and we have drugs and medicines that can cure many things. The brain, though, is incredibly complex. It seems like we're not all that much closer to diagnosing brain issues than we were 20, 40 years ago.
Unfortunately, you're spot on. And it is so complex, we don't even understand it, much less treat it. Now, we can treat some of the symptoms. So, for example, if you have language issues, we can do speech therapy. If you're having irritability issues, personality issues, we can do antidepressants. But we can't treat the underlying pathophysiology. So the progression of the disease continues. Now everybody progresses at a different rate, and different parts progress differently. So some people are more affected by language if it's the temporal lobe, some are more affected by personality issues if it's the frontal. But it's really tragic because there's not much you can do for the disease itself.
Yeah, and you think of that command of your emotions, because the emotions in and around his family, inside of him. I remember I had a chance to speak just in a private conversation with Muhammad Ali as he was going through Parkinson's. And I always wondered if that sharp wit that was now slowed by the diseases, if he still thought as quickly and couldn't execute it, or if he didn't think as quickly and was executing as fast as he could. It's things like that that make me wonder about these types of terrible brain conditions.
Certainly, I mean, how much insight you have, do you know that you're a different person, is a big part of the dementia. And unfortunately, most of the time, you don't know that you're doing, being irritable, or, in FTD, you can do things like repetitive eating behaviors, putting things in your mouth that are not edible. You can, have complications like pneumonia because of poor personal hygiene. So you don't really have insight, which also makes it all the harder, not just for the person, but their family. family.
And is it a one-way road?
that.
Is it a deteriorative road? I mean, you can slow the deterioration possibly, but you can't turn it back. You can't, there's no repair at this point.
That's right. It's progressive. The rate of progression is variable. And of course, you can manage the symptoms along the way. Now, some people will live for years and years and years with it because they have a mild form of it. But if it progresses rapidly, it certainly is one of those dementias that can put you in a nursing home needing 24/7 care or, you know, an attendant at all times.
Well, it's tough to hear about. Again, brave on their part to acknowledge it and have us all talk about it and be aware of it. But that's tough. It's just
Sad update,
sad.
but we did learn more about it today, and hopefully we'll be following what is a very slow progression in the case of Bruce Willis and many others. Thanks as always, Dr. Payal Kohli.